Got it. Now I wait for YouTube to pop up. There we go. Okay, good. And then I'm going to share it. Copy. And I heard it go off on my phone, which means everyone else got the notification. So they will be joining anytime, but let me go add it in here.
Sounds good.
I like doing it as people get used to the new time. Sometimes they forget. All right, it is posted.
Oh, gee. Raquel's sharing it's live in the ladies group chat for revival, and I'm getting the alerts on my watch.
Oh, yep. And we already got a bunch in there.
Everybody, I'm like,
there we are. So we have Raquel and Sarah, Ashley, Alyssa, Cameron, Julia. Everyone's joining early today. Good. We're already having 8 tuning in. Okay, good. So we'll go ahead and start. As you can see, we have my lovely guest, Mrs. Ashlyn Thrasher. So go ahead. I know you've been on before, but just introduce yourself. You know, I kind of even wanted to get your very quick, like, salvation testimony and how long you've been going to church, you know, that type of thing. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, I have been actively saved and attending an IFB church for, over 10 years, because my son Sawyer is 10, so 10 and a half. So I'd say you put me roughly in that 10 and a half to 11 years, I guess. No, you can't come in here. Sorry, my kid's already trying to break in.
And yes, I was going to say, since we have this new time, there she is. Hi, Sailor.
There she is.
Since we have this new time, we don't have the evening time where husbands are home from work. So a lot of my guests are going to have littles in the background, but hey,
yes,
Gently Led Sisters channel. We have moms on here with kids. So if it gets a little chaotic, it's okay.
Well, it's okay because the 2-year-old's down for his nap. So he'll sleep the whole time. And my 10-year-old already knows if he wakes up, he can't come in here and he just has to keep him out there, keep him happy. So I've already prepared ahead of time. So I'm not worried.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It is what it is. So anyways, you were saved. You were saved when Sawyer, you were pregnant with him.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you've told that testimony before, which is a really neat one. So check for any of the videos Mrs. Ashlyn Thrasher is on, and you could hear that testimony if you're interested. But who are you married to and how many kids do you have?
My husband is Frank Thrasher, and we have 4 children right now. I have my 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2.5-year-old who is crazy and so full of energy. I love him, but he is my wild card child, my COVID baby. And
okay, but you say that, and honestly, when we were there, I think he's better behaved than Hannah.
Well, you see the Spurrier that has been, and this is why we're talking about this. That's been a lot of working to get him there, and it all depends on the day, even the location we're at.
Yeah,
you know, so it's like he, like, for whatever reason, when we're in Jacksonville, he decides that he's gonna chat the whole service. He's looking at the Raptors. He's like, I'm like, wait, why? Like, this is, so it's a much smaller setting, so everybody hears him, and I'm like,
and I did not see him do that once when I was in Florida.
Well, he was much younger then, though. So I'm talking about the current Spurrier crazy 2-year-old is definitely one of the most difficult times as far as the training. Yeah. Because you are like, they're starting to find their voice. They're like, oh, I can walk around. I can do things. I can get into all mom's stuff. So it's like, for me, especially, I'm like, this is crunch time. This is where it's like, you have to nip certain things in the bud now, or when they're 3, it's like, I think the 2s are actually not that bad. I think 3s is actually the more terrifying terror.
I agree with you, especially
if you don't get that under control.
Yes, so. I agree. And I want to say too, when I had kids your age, when I had a bunch of kids, I think I had 5 in 10 years. So I had 5 kids in 10 years. I was much more on top of it because I had to be, because I didn't have the older kids to help out. but I've kind of slacked off with my last two because I have my teenagers that help watch them during services. So I'm able to still do, in fact, my girls are in a rotation now because I do so much with our music.
Right.
We don't have a regular nursery. I wanted to mention too, that this is a lot of tips that we've gleaned just being from family integrated churches, and we're both part of family integrated churches, which basically means that all kids, whatever age, 0 up to 100, are welcome in the services. And so we are used to having babies in the service, hearing babies. We don't have regular nursery workers. We have, I still call it the nursery because I'm just Baptist and that's what it's always been called.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have like regular scheduled nursery workers. It's kind of up to the mom or the family to take care of whatever kids are in there. And so my kids will rotate, my daughters will rotate watching them, which is nice. So because of that, I haven't had to stay on top of it as much as you have, because you don't really have that option right now.
Sawyer is very helpful, especially at home with just in that aspect. But at church, I don't want to put at 10 years old. If he was my daughter, I think I would feel a little differently. But I'm not going to be like, bud, okay, now you're here with your friends, but no, you got to help me with Spanky.
Right.
That's just not really that's not fair. We only get to be there on Sundays right now. And thankfully we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel to where we are going to be moving and not have be able to be there for every service, every soul winning event we can make it to, and not have to be 3 hours away from all the church things. But because of that season we're in right now with that, I'm not going to take away that time that they do have, because just like I am growing in my faith and my relationship with the Lord and really kind of finding out where I fit in serving, I want my kids to be able to do the same. So just recently, Simon decided to do a special. He had never done that before. He really stepped outside his comfort zone. And for me as a mom, I tell my daughter, do you want to sit here with me? You have to sit and be quiet. You can sit right here and watch, but you can't be talking. Sorry. So this is another training moment.
Yeah.
But you have to sit out of the screen. You have to sit over here.
She's like, I want to be on the camera.
Yeah, you can't do that because you'll mess it up. Your blonde hair attracts the light. So anyway, but he did do that. And he made that decision on his own. He asked Brother Jonathan to help him. And then I didn't find out till after they were going to pastor or somebody, I don't know who told me, was they're doing a special tomorrow. And I'm like, Mommy. Oh, okay. But I was at the same time, I'm like, well, that's wonderful. That's what we're all aiming for.
Right.
And I want them to have those opportunities. I want them to be able to, take those moments and grow in their, walk with the Lord, but also just having that desire. I want that in their hearts. I instill that at home. I encourage them if they ever want to do something to do it. So I think that's super important for them. So I don't know how I got off on that, but nonetheless.
No, that's okay. We're going to get right into our outline. So, we met Ashlyn, and like she's talking about, having kids will change your life. So it changes how much sleep you get. It changes how much time you have. It changes the way you view the world. It also changes church life for you. So, and let me add, especially when you are family integrated, like we are, kids are welcomed and encouraged in the church services and out soul winning as well. So you have to figure out ways to streamline, ways to train them. They have to be a little bit better trained than most IFB kids. Otherwise you go crazy. So today's show is about managing church life with lots of littles. So we met Ashlyn, but let's start off this thing by talking about taking them soul winning, because I want us to talk about that. Now, the last 2 years have been very rough for me when it comes to soul winning. I've pretty much only been able to do the big days or our monthly soul winning days, because then both my husband and I can go together and he can help wrangle a baby while I wrangle a baby, since I had babies within 2 years. There's not even a 2-year gap. So if you are in that season of life, and we're going to talk a little bit about it as we go with the soul winning section, but I don't want this to be something that's guilt tripping you or you think that you're pressured to do this, because at the end of the day, your most important role right now is being their mother and taking care of them. And that frees up your husband or your older kids for doing soul winning events. And, you know, maybe they're talkers. I know with my girls are both talkers. So if I'm watching the babies rather than them, they're both going out, you know, with my husband as well. So but anyways, I was impressed when I went soul winning. That's what gave me this whole idea when Ashlyn and I had the opportunity when I was in Florida to go soul winning together. She got out her little wagon and she had like all the soul winning, you know, basics in there. And I was like, let's do a show about this, just talking about soul winning when you're taking little kids and everything. So what are some of the benefits that you've seen of bringing our kids with us when we go soul winning?
Well, I think for me, it was twofold, because for one, I wanted even my younger kids, my older boys, they go out with a lot of the older boys, or even occasionally some of the other men. So because at revival, everybody just kind of splits up. There have been a couple of times where I wasn't even sure where they ended up. They were just with people in vans, and I was like, it is what it is. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So, but I want my kids to be out in the field just as much as we are learning. So the older boys, it's easy, you know, they can just go with, they know where they can go. They know who they can go with, no big deal. And then for the little kids, like, especially Spurrier, because he is kind of like, how would you say?
A loose cannon.
Strung. And I'm like, I'd rather take the time, even though sometimes I feel like I'm shooting myself in the foot, and teach him, okay, this is a time where you're going to sit in the wagon. You have your toys, you have your things that you can do, but you can't get out of the wagon. So no matter how many times he says he wants out, I'm like, no, you're going to stay in. But it's also like, for me too, I kind of felt like I had gotten out of the habit of even going, and I kind of started making excuses because maybe the other moms didn't do it. So I felt a conviction about it, because I used to be more active in my soul winning. We are at faith. Really, that's when our soul winning journey really, really kicked off. And I'll talk about that more later, but that's where it really started for us. And everybody went out, even the moms with brand new babies that were maybe a month old. Like, everybody just went out. It wasn't like a question. It was just a group effort, because we were a smaller, close-knit group. We needed all hands on deck, in a sense, if that makes sense. So I think that's really where it started for me. And so kind of once I kind of got in a weird transition when we moved to Jack's, where maybe as many of the ladies didn't go out. And so then I kind of was just like going along, I guess, for a while. Then I was like, you know, that's not me. So it's kind of just figuring out, you know, like what worked for me, and not really letting not saying that what other people did was bad, but just saying like, I wanted to be out. I am a more naturally talkative person. But I also, I have a burden for it. Like, just recently I was driving back into my neighborhood, and there was a lady and her husband broken down, and I had already driven by them once and checked on them. And then I came back by and they were still there. So I took them some bottled water. And then I just asked the husband and the wife if they were saved, and the husband was. He had all the right answers. He was 100% saved, but the wife was not, and she was pregnant. So even with my kids in the car and being just in the front of my neighborhood, I was able to lead her to the Lord. And that's something that I think it is in my heart. Like, I have and so when the Lord really presses on, like in that situation, I was like, you need to go back and talk to them. So I found a way using water as an in and checking on them to see that lady get saved. And I think that should be at the forefront of, and it is at the forefront of my mind a lot. So even if I'm at a car wash, I always try, and if I can't find an opening, because at the end of the day, just like we hear her preaching all the time, that's our job. That should be not just on a Saturdays and Sundays. And I'm not trying to guilt trip anybody and make myself look great, but it's like, to me, that is really the most important thing. I can take time out of my day. If I see an opening, I'm going to find it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to try and at least plant a seed. And that lady got saved, and I rejoiced for her, because, you know, she was brand new pregnant with her second child, you know, and that could be a moment that she looks back on her life and she's like, I know that lady was crazy, but I'm glad that she stopped, took the time to lead me to the Lord, because now not only do you have her saved, but her and her husband. and I sent them to Abiding Word. I hope they go there. I hope they get plugged in, you know, and I tried to just encourage them. And that's the whole job. That's the whole thing for me and for anybody, I think, that's wanting to serve the Lord. It shouldn't just be a pastor and his wife. It should be any church member.
But I like what you said. You clarified that, you know, I started doing what I was convicted to do. You know, you didn't have people guilt tripping you into it. You know, you're like, why aren't you going out, Ashlyn? You know, what's wrong with you? No, you felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit and you took the steps to do what it needed to be done to make it happen. So I think that's a point. That's a good point. And, you know, honestly, when it comes to serving the Lord, if you feel guilt tripped into it, or you just feel the pressure, then you're not even doing it for the right reasons. You know, you're not even earning rewards that way when you're doing it that way. The Lord sees he sees your heart, you know, he sees the reason that you're serving. And so if he knows that you're genuinely doing it based out of conviction or what the Holy Spirit has told you, then, you know, that's what counts. So I appreciate that you said that for sure. Yeah. So I know one of the benefits of bringing me is kind of one of the things I've noticed is that they hear when they're with a soul winning, they're hearing, number one, they're hearing the gospel presentation. If we're able to give it, they're hearing the gospel presentation over and over and over. And I really feel that's why Lana was saved so early. She was saved at 4.5. And it was from all the times I was like, that was my best year of soul winning, was the year that she was saved, where I was able to go out the most. I had made it a personal goal to reach 30 people, you know, because the Bible talks about different numbers. He gave some this and some this. And so I had the 30 person goal and I met it. I think I had 33 or 34 saved that year. And Lana was with me that entire time. And that's the year that she got saved. And I think it was just from her hearing the gospel presentation. It got her interest. She heard that and was convicted and all that scripture. And then also with my kids, it's helped them see me answer maybe the questions, sometimes from scorners. And so then you move on, but you know, it shows them that I have answers for all these things that people throw at me. And I actually, in the back of my Bible, have a list of common questions, and common concerns, along with scripture to answer those. So have you seen that that's played out in your kids' lives as well?
Yes, I have, especially like, even though Sailor is not saved yet, we've tried sharing the gospel with her, and she's not quite there yet, like maturity wise. But she knows, like, it's by believing, it's by trusting in Jesus, it's by just that, you know, that's all it takes. And then even Spurrier, he's little, but it's so cute. Anytime he finds a church tract on the floor, I see him trying to shove it indoors.
Aww.
And I'm like, you know, you may only be 2, but man, is that cute. And it just shows how much they learn, even when you don't think, because most of the time he's sitting in the wagon playing with Paw Patrol toys.
Yeah.
And his see and say, and yes, I carry toys around with me everywhere. People can make fun of me. And I can be the lady with the toys at family camp. I don't care, because it's like, but yes,
I forgot about that.
Only people that can't will understand the joke. But, you know, okay, I'm going to try to burst out laughing. But that just shows, you know, that they absorb so much at these ages. So even though sometimes I'm like, man, I can't believe I'm trying to do this with this kid today, I never regret taking him out. I never regret, because some days that I'm thinking this is the worst possible day for me to go out soul winning, I see some of the sweetest salvations. And, you know, so it's like, I'm thankful that I get to even be in a soul winning church and be around like-minded believers. And Revival is hands down the best church I've ever been a part of as far as the spirit. And I grow every week, and I get so much out of every message, no matter who it's from. And, you know, just the spirit we enjoy is something that can't be understated by any means. So I'm always grateful for that. I never seem to get less grateful.
Yep. The Lord's doing great things with your church. So, and it's growing and reaching people, and it's amazing to see what's going on there. Kaylin asked, can I just start soul winning by myself? My church doesn't do it, and I talk to a lot of people every day. So I was just wondering, and here's the thing, you don't even have to, and we kind of cover that a little bit later. We're kind of jumping around, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to have like a scheduled soul winning time. You can soul win at different instances throughout your life. You can be a soul winner. I know wheelchair bound older people who are the best soul winners I've ever seen in my life, because whoever they come into contact with, they give the gospel. So yes, Kaylin, you can give the gospel to anyone that you come into contact with, just like Ashlyn did to the people that were broken down. You know, she gave the gospel and one of them got saved. So, and then I'm telling you, the thing with soul winning is once you start seeing people saved from your efforts, it makes the Bible come alive, at least for me. It makes the gospel come alive because it's so easy. It strengthens your faith. The more people that you get saved, it does so much. It just reinforces what you believe in. And it's a pretty awesome feeling that you're probably going to want to keep happening over and over and over again. So I know people that start soul winning, it's like watching a new life in a spiritual sense, you know, or watching a birth take place. And it's so exciting. And once you get a taste of that, you usually want to keep doing it. But yeah, you definitely can. I would say, especially if you are running into people, I know you go to school, if you have classmates that are asking you about it, you know, you can even use church tracks to kind of, if you're new to it, kind of, it has the steps outlined. We use a really good track from Silent Witness Literature, I believe is what it's called. It has very clear gospel presentation in it. And that can help you when you first start out. You know, eventually it would be great if you could use your own words and then know where the verses were to turn to, because really people get saved by hearing the word of God. So you want to have lots of verses in your presentation, because that's what has the power to, convict. So, but yeah, definitely. Also, one thing I've noticed with taking my kids out, and some people have mixed thoughts about this, but the Bible does tell us that we are to judge righteous judgment. A lot of times they see what sin does in people's lives. When we go up to the homes where it's broken beer bottles everywhere and they can smell the marijuana. We smell marijuana a lot when we're out soul winning.
Yesterday, me and Brittany both were just like, woo.
Yep. We smell it a lot. In fact, one time it was really cold and it was a single mom and her kids, and she wanted me to come inside. I don't like coming inside. It makes me a little uncomfortable, but I could tell it was a safe situation, and it was winter in Illinois. And so I did step inside, but she was smoking marijuana and she ended up accepting the Lord. And when I left the house 15, 20 minutes later, I smelled like marijuana for the rest of the day.
Oh man.
I did. But you know what? It's worth it because, everyone can get saved, even though smoking marijuana while they're getting saved. So anyone could get saved. But have you found that in your life with your kids?
I'm sorry. Let's
just like seeing different situations when you're out soul winning, or I don't know.
Oh yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want me to tell all the crazy stuff we experienced last week that I told you about?
Oh yeah, go ahead. And I haven't heard them yet. So
that's stories. Oh my. Okay. So we're going to tell this story live. All right.
Yes.
Well, Brittany Boyle and I had quite the most interesting Sunday, not this past Sunday, not yesterday, but the Sunday before. I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this story. Sorry, Brittany, but it's all good because it's for the Lord. So it was just crazy because we had never even gone soul winning together. So this was the funniest part of it all. But we decided we would go out because our husbands always go out together. So we did. And we were just a few minutes from the church. So we get out and we go to one of the first stores. And before we're hardly in the driveway, Brittany's saying something to the guy. And then he's like, "Oh, I know about your church." And we're like, oh dear. In our minds, we're probably like, what is this guy's problem? Turns out he had been kicked out for some inappropriate behavior. Oh. There was actually some bad, so he was not a good guy. So I was like, we were quickly just trying to get out of there, but he kept yelling at us as we were leaving. He called us thugs. He called Pastor Boyle a thug. It was thug? Really great.
He called you a thug? So
that was the first or second door we knocked. Oh, but it gets better. This is only the beginning. So then we keep going. And we're like we're almost to one of the last houses we're at. And we don't think the guy even heard us knocking or me knocking. So, but then we're trying to leave because I was going to knock one more time. But then I was like, this house isn't going to hear because they didn't have the screen door you could open to go to the front door.
Right.
Like it was all locked. So it was like locked down like Fort Knox, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but then all of a sudden the garage door starts opening. So I back up and I'm like getting ready to hand him a track. Well, this guy turned out to be pretty crazy. When I talked to him, he said he just believed in a higher power. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to get past this whole higher power thing. Like, okay, well, do you even believe Jesus is real? And he's like, no, I just believe in a higher power. And then I'm not really paying attention to what's beside me, but it had just been Halloween. And there was a very creepy baby doll with a completely black face. The eyes were covered. The whole face was black. The hair had been cut off. Brittany said the fingers had been cut off. I didn't pay too much attention.
Nice.
But then as we're leaving, I'm going to turn to leave. He starts talking to the doll, calling it Stanley. I'm not realizing that he had a steak in his hand that he said he was going to feed Stanley dinner.
Okay.
So we're both just like, what in the what did we just walk into? And this is all within an hour. So we get out of the Stanley situation. We're like, run away. At that point, we're just like, just run away. We're done with Stanley. And so then we get a total Karen guy in his Jeep yelling at us, telling us he's gonna call the police.
Oh my.
And we're like, well, you can call them. We're almost done. Go ahead and call them. They know about us. But then the very last door I knocked, the guy told me he was saved because he was a Republican. But then I'm like, well, what if you were a Democrat? Would you still go to heaven? He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay. Well, can I ask, what do you believe in and trust? And once I got past the initial shock of that answer, he was really saved. But he really, in the beginning, he honestly believed, or he told me he was a Republican, so he was going to heaven.
Okay. I never heard that one before.
And nobody got saved that day, but he was 100% saved. But that was just about the craziest soul winning.
Stanley. I'm just glad.
1 hour.
Yeah.
Me and Brittany were
that's
like,
crazy.
What in the what? So Stanley will never forget. We'll never forget that Stanley.
No.
Probably mentally scarred our children for life.
They'll never name a doll Stanley. That is so funny.
That's just about the craziest thing. So I hope that answered your question well.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Okay. So the thing that you find about soul winning too is that you get experiences like this where you can laugh about them. Like, do you remember that time? And do you remember that time? And yeah, you get really funny stories and you'll never really realize the fellowship until you're all just sitting around after soul winning time, telling all these crazy stories of everything. So, wow, that was quite the day. All that to say, that wasn't a very fruitful day.
No, it wasn't. But Morgan told me we couldn't go get coffee if we didn't get any soul saved. And I said, I think we earned our coffee still.
Yes,
Morgan.
You did. You definitely earned it that day. So yes. But then it also, I believe with kids, it teaches them boldness. I have some daughters. I have some daughters that are very introverted by nature, but it's been nice just seeing them gain boldness through soul winning, coming complete strangers. The first door or two that I knock when I go out, I still get nervous. And once I get past that first door or two, I'm fine. And I'm a very extroverted person. So for those that are introverted, it's a huge step of faith and courage to even go knock on a complete stranger's door and, ask to talk to them about it. So I definitely feel with my own kids, it teaches them boldness. And then even with social skills. Now, and we were talking about this when we were soul winning together. How you learn how to decipher social skills from the people. When someone wants nothing to do with it as they're closing the door in your face. As you're like, hi, okay, have a nice day. You can decipher body language, different things like that. You can tell when someone's open and wanting to hear more. You can tell when someone's just putting up with you to get rid of you. And so I do think even with my own kids, it's really helped show them and hone in those social cues.
Yes, absolutely.
So does Simon, are any of your kids talkers? At 10, Sawyer probably isn't.
Not, we've practiced a lot at home, but he's just
10 is
not
very young.
Yeah.
That's very
young.
young.
I think he could do it, but I think it's just, I never pressure them to feel like, I know that he can at least give a very solid intro for sure. I've heard that from him at home. We practice that at home. Like he does that well. And I was actually really impressed because like the last time we did it, we had not really done it in quite some time. And he blew me away with how much he was doing by memory, which I have a horrible memory. So I was definitely happy to see that because it's like, but no, none of them are talking yet. And Simon, he's 8. So I mean, no. And then Sailor, she's a wild card too, in a sense. She just throws rocks around a lot of times.
But I've noticed even if they're not talkers, for us personally, sometimes we'll go up to the door with Kelly, or even Hannah hasn't done it as much. But when we knock and the people come to the door, we'll have Kelly hand them the track or the YouTube card or whatever as we're giving our introduction. And people are a lot more receptive when you
That's why I use Sailor for the same thing, because they are more receptive to cute little kids. So she likes to do that. And so if she wants to that day, I'm always like, well, yeah, come on, hold the card, here you go. And then her biggest thing is she kind of gets easily distracted. So then she'll usually walk away after she does that, which is fine. I mean, she's 5. I'm not going to stress that issue. So, but yeah, I do the same thing.
Yep. So I think those are all good things when we're taking out kids, and then also just getting outside and walking. That's good for them, getting out in the fresh air. I'm kind of jealous. In Florida, you don't really have to worry about weather unless you're in a hurricane. Whereas in Illinois, we're getting into our slower season because it is getting so cold out. It's 23 last night or something. So, it's getting really cold out here. But what are some trips and ticks? I just
trips and ticks. I saw that.
Trips and tricks. Tips and tricks. There we go. I know for me, one of the biggest thing is if I'm going to be going out soul winning, I will not take a kid that is just super tired unless they have the chance of falling asleep in the stroller or something, because then that's actually a blessing when they fall asleep. But what are some things that you've done? I know we kind of mentioned it earlier with the wagon and the toys and all that.
I think that is, especially now that I've had the wagon for quite some time. The biggest thing is I bring lots of toys. I have a whole backpack just full of things that he likes to play with that he only gets once a week. So it's like he forgets that he has them. So it's like his special soul winning toy bag. And that's the biggest thing for him. I tried different things. I even tried the whole cocoa melon thing. Well, a few times that didn't really work.
I noticed he doesn't. He's not really one that watches stuff really.
No. And so it's just, you kind of have to gauge your kid.
Yes.
So with the other ones, they were a lot more they would just, Sailor, I just strapped her in. She would just sit in the stroller. She'd be good to go. I don't really remember much of an issue with her when she was that age but then again, at the same time, we were in Jack's. So I didn't necessarily go out as much with her at that particular time, just because a lot of the ladies didn't. So that, like I said before, that was kind of like a weird time where I was in a bit of a soul winning decline in that particular year, possibly. But so that's my biggest thing is I do the toys. And he's not allowed to get out of the wagon. It's simply not allowed. I don't care if he tries to throw a fit. If he really starts acting out, I get my spoon out and I pop on his leg. I tell him no. and I just simply don't allow it. And maybe that sounds harsh, but I know my son, he is such just you saw him that day we had to go out and we couldn't take the wagon.
Yes.
He was all over the floor and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh my soul, but we had no choice because that apartment building, there was no way to make the wagon work. And so that was a really for me, I was having to really just breathe and just be okay with holding him. And even though my arm was practically breaking because I wasn't going to let him just be losing his mind during the sewing time. I was like, you may hate that I'm going to hold you right now, and I'm not going to let you run down this hall, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you have to be quick to adapt. So in that moment, I was like, oh my, we're going to be going up and down these stairs. There's no way. Yeah. So it's like, Cassandra, are you ready to make this work? Even this is not what I had planned.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, like, there was just sometimes that's how it goes, and you just have to roll with it. Even if you have to hold your toddler and try and sew one at the same time, you just figure it out.
Yep. And that is thing. It does. It does teach you to adapt for sure. So, and then I know I have gone when my babies were little. Baby carriers are wonderful. Yes. And most of the time my babies would fall asleep, which was wonderful as well. So most of the time they would fall asleep when I had them in the baby carrier. But yep. So that being said, we kind of talked a little bit about this, so we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on this, but you know, I know for us, for our church, especially, we don't pressure moms with tons of little kids to go out. Sometimes it's just, and then too, if you have a mom, we have a lot of moms with kids that are three kids, 3 and under. Yeah. And that is a lot to take them out. So it works better if the mom stays back, especially if they're a breastfeeding mom. If the mom stays back while the dad goes, then that's allowing the dad to go. So, we have family soul winning days once a month where it's a little bit, we try to make it a little easier. We try to find a place that will work with families that are going, you know, those aren't the times that we're going to do like the apartment complexes that are, you know, very shady, or, you know, people give you a hard time there, or we try to pick family friendly areas where we'll have good reception and stuff for those days. Yeah. But I liked how you said, you know, you were convicted to do it, and it does need to be a conviction, not something you are pressured into. So I would just say, for those of you that are hardcore soul winners, and let's say you popped a baby out and a week later you were soul winning, that's great for you. I actually would not recommend that.
I wouldn't either.
I would not recommend that. Your body needs to heal.
Yeah, no, I would never do that. And I would not push or recommend that.
No, but let's say you are, okay. That's just your, like, this is my conviction. I'm going to do this. That's fine. But don't put that on other people. You know, don't put, that's your conviction and God's laid that on your heart, but not everyone needs to be as hardcore as you. So, and then if it's not your season, you know, don't despair. Your season will come. You're going to have, your kids are going to grow older. And as your kids grow older, and you start taking them out, usually about 3, 4, 5 is about, I've found in my own life, is a good age where they're pretty well behaved by that point, that, you know, they're not really throwing fits. They know how to communicate with you, and they've learned, you know, you have to stay in your stroller, or you have to stay in your baby carrier or whatever. 3, 4, and 5 seems to be a good age, where they really listen. I found. So, and then also go as a couple, if that makes it easier, you know. Like I said, in family soul winning days, I tend to go with my husband, because then he knows our kids well and he can help out. And then I can talk, or vice versa. But I would say also trust your instinct. So if they're just having a bad day, let's say, and you know, they do. Yeah. Kelly throws fits sometimes. And if she just has one fit after another, that might not be the day to take her soul winning.
Yeah. So, yes. There's been many days where I have like just kind of realized this is not the day for Spurrier. Yeah. And it was like, I don't remember what the reasons were, but it was like, he was just off, and I could tell, okay, this is not going to work today. I never push that, because then it's just not fair. Like, how can you expect them to go out and just chill, be in the stroller when they're really not feeling well? I mean, I think at that point it's almost like you're trying to prove something to someone, and that's not why we do what we do.
Right. Yes. Thank you for saying that. Exactly. And that I feel exactly the same way. You're not going out soul winning to prove, look at what a hardcore soul winner I am. Even if my kid was puking the night before and he's just really not feeling it today, you know, you're not really proving anything to anyone. So, just, it might be better to stay back sometimes, you know, and if someone asks, just say they're having a hard time and they needed me. They needed to stay with me. They needed some downtime. It wasn't the time, especially in Florida, to take them out in 105-degree weather or whatever. So, and then just realize, like we were kind of talking to Kaylin earlier, you can soul win in day-to-day life. It doesn't have to just be soul winning days. You know, so there will be different situations that come up in your life where you can do soul winning. You know, it's not a set soul winning time, but you're still giving the gospel.
And I would say, as far as what she was asking earlier, is also be really sensitive to, if like for some reason maybe you get like all of a sudden, because this has happened to me a few times in my life, where like in the back of my mind, I'm in the middle of Walmart or I'm doing something random, but then like the Lord puts it on my heart, go talk to this person, go talk to this person. It happened. Actually the very first person I got saved was in Walmart. He was a guy that I knew. I had seen a lot from just shopping at that local Walmart. Young Black man that was about to go into the Army. And we had just, through interactions, we were friendly. And there was just a burden on my heart to get back up there and try and get him safe. I was just learning how to soul win. So, I mean, I was like, so I really had that conviction then, because I was just learning how. And so I literally ran home, threw my pizzas in the oven that I had just got from Little Caesars or something, grabbed my soul winning Bible, went back up there, because it was like 2 minutes from my house. And I was able to lead that young man to the Lord right before he went into the Army. Nice. And the craziest thing about it is I remember when I was praying with him, that like all of a sudden there's this lady that she comes and she stands with us and she's like, I just want to bear witness of this moment. I never saw her face though. My husband is kind of partial to the fact that she may have just been an angel that kind of just was there, because by the time I looked up, she was already gone. So I never saw her. So that was just like a crazy, and I'm not saying like to seem weird with the angel thing, because who really knows, but it was just kind of like a crazy thing that I never saw her face. I don't even know if he saw her, but she just walked up to us as we were eyes closed praying. He was accepting the Lord. And that, I mean, like that doesn't happen normally. That's never happened to me again.
Right.
But I mean, things like that do happen. So really just being sensitive to, if you get that nudging, don't dismiss it, because it could be a situation like that where a young man who's about to go into the Army doesn't know what his future holds. What if he had died and I had ignored that and I had ignored that nudging? And then what if something had happened? I would have lived with the guilt and he would have never gotten saved.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, a lot of it is just following the leading of the Holy Spirit. If you're ever put in that situation where people are asking questions, you know, then be prepared to answer them for sure. But I wanted to get into this quickly because we're it's already 3:42. Let's talk about church life with littles. And this is where I'm going to pick your brain. Well, we'll get into it in a minute because Logan just asked a question. She said, can you give tips on soul winning out in rural areas? Houses are very far apart. Getting the kids in and out of the car over and over. There are dogs. Yeah. Ugh. I know for us, when we have done that, actually here, that doesn't happen too often here. We usually try to do places where it's walkable. When we have had to do places where we have the vehicle, we actually just can leave the kids. We can drive up the driveway and leave the kids in the car while we go up. For me, I have older kids too, so that helps with that. But there's not too many places where we just have to, we can't walk. So I don't know, because in Florida too, it's so packed.
Yeah, I don't have any advice on that one other than what you said. I think that makes sense. I would say, driving up, leaving the kids in the car. That would be the only solution I could think of. If
you are at a house far away from another house, the chances of someone stealing that car are going to be extremely low. Not to say it's not impossible, but I would say, I would say I don't think that anyone's going to jump in the car and take off with your kids, especially if you're 10 feet away at the front door. But I've done that before garage sailing. I don't know when I've been in the car. You know, when I was younger, when I would do garage selling, I would have them right there. So
if I ever leave my car and I'm like walking away from my kids, I always tell them lock the doors. That's like a rule.
Right.
So, I mean, if it's like, or I'm literally walking into a store, I can keep the eyes on the car the whole time to where like I'm literally, but they know they're not allowed to open the doors. They're not allowed to open the windows. Right. Like, so if they do, they know the wrath of mom will come.
Yeah. When I had, about when my oldest was 12 or 13, I started doing that. I'd lock the door and run in, and I actually had the cops called on me for that, which was ridiculous. And when the cop found out that my oldest was almost 13, it was a woman cop. She was like, "Oh, no problem." I came walking up when she was talking to him, and she's like, "Well, ma'am, you had the police called on you." And she's like, "We had to come because they called." She's like, "But if you think he's old enough and mature enough, it's fine. It's great." It was, the car was running, but it was locked because it was like 80 degrees out or something. She's like, "It's running. They're fine."
Yes.
You know, so.
And in Florida, you're allowed 15 minutes, which I mean, I never left them for that long, but I mean, most states have some kind of like, as long as they're safe and you're within not like, an hour.
Right.
It's not.
And that's the thing too. I would check state laws. And Jenny just said that they kind of switch off. So when they go together, she has Aaron stay with the littles and she goes with Seth and he goes with Lily. So they tag team in and out. And that's a good idea too.
Yes.
Yeah, there is an actual law, like a hot car law. Maybe that's why she said that, the car's running. It wasn't even that hot that day, but it was like 80 degrees. She's like, the car's running, the air's on, it's fine. So that's probably why.
Yeah, it's the hot car issue that people freak out about.
Right. Yep. Okay. But yeah, let's get into church behavior. So sitting through church takes a lot of training. Lots and lots of training. So kind of give us some tips, kind of tell us, when I was there, Spurrier was amazing. I was like, oh my stars, he's 2 years old and look at the way he's sitting through church. So Hannah is not to that point. We are lucky if we make it through the song service at this point because she's so loud and screechy. And I've been trying to teach her. So she's learning that, but then she'll be like, bah, 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 bah. Shh. Like really, really loud. I'm like, okay, that's not the point. But how did you train Spurrier to sit?
Well, okay. I made notes about this, so I'm kind of gonna look over what I did because it's when our kids with Spurrier. Well, I'm going to kind of go back to how I started because when we first started going to church and like IFE churches, that's how my husband grew up. That's what I started going to as soon as I got saved, obviously. And before I got saved, that's how I got saved, was in an IFE church at an altar call, believe it or not. And so, but they went, the Sawyer and Simon, they did the nursery when they were younger. They did the little kids classes because we were still in old IFE churches up until I think Simon was 4. And so then after it really, like, that training really got established for just our kids and how we started, handling things at Faith, because it was a much closer knit, and there wasn't a lot of families, like it was a smaller church. So everybody had their kids in the service. So it was like all the kids did it. And even though it was like, we would have to maybe every so often tell the boys, okay, remember, you're not to talk. It was just a quick snap of the fingers or like a little no sign with the sign language, which is what I do now. If the younger kids, not really the older boys, because they just don't really do anything crazy nowadays. Right. But, if they need a reminder, it was something like that to just let them know, hey, you can't be squirming all over your chair and turning around and looking at, your friend, like that doesn't fly. So we established that pretty early with the boys. And that kind of carried over as Sailor was born. She was, when we first started going to stay, she was like little, like maybe just a few months old. I think she was under 6 months, but I could be wrong. I can't remember. My husband didn't remember either, which is shocking. But anyway, so she was just a little thing. So it really, for her, when she was 18 months, and we were in Jack's, I really just started working with her after we moved and trying to get her to sit in my lap, which she did really well. She sat in my lap. We would put Sawyer right beside Frank. So he always sat at the very end on the aisle, and then Sawyer, and then me in a rocking chair, and then Simon beside me and Sailor in my lap. And so it wasn't really up for discussion. Now, obviously, we always made them use the bathroom before service.
Yeah.
And at that age, especially, they were not allowed to get up during service. We simply just said no, because we took care of all the things prior, and that's how we handled that when they were that age. Sailor, it's sometimes like if she has to go to the bathroom like really bad, she tells me, and then I pull her out, take her, but that's very rare. Normally she falls asleep, especially in the evening service, which I'm like, you know what, you're 5. I'm not going to press that issue. Like, so that helps a lot, but we drive almost 3 hours every Sunday.
Right.
So we were up at 5 yesterday. So, I mean, like, I'm not going to, especially right now, I'm not going to push that issue to, force her to stay awake and things like that. Now, Simon, he does this number sometimes, and I'm like, I get him in the arm and I make him stay awake.
He's 10 though. So,
he's 8.
Oh, Simon, not
so,
clear.
but like,
but that's so still pretty.
It's so Spurrier, but anyway, so I know I'm kind of getting off on rabbit trails.
No, you're fine.
Sorry. Spurrier though, I basically, if he's really starting to act up in church, I take him out. I basically let him know, and this is what I've done with Sailor. I let them know, hey, you're going to sit still. You're going to be quiet. They get, basically some training. I'm going to use that word, a little spanking. Good let them know this is a quiet time. So and then he says bad boy. And I'm like, no, you're going to be a good boy. and because I think he knows he's being bad. I don't know. So I'm like, well, you're going to be a good boy now. You're going to sit. You're going to be quiet. You're going to pay attention. You can't talk. And then usually if I do that one time, he knows. And maybe I have to just lightly tap his leg to remind him, no. That's all it really takes. And then usually he does fall asleep. So that's part of the reason he's so quiet. So in my mind, sometimes I do want to pull my hair out with him, because I'm like, bro, stop trying to. And then of course he wants to talk to Pastor, because Pastor's his favorite, and we're right up front. So so that's a whole nother thing, but he's gotten a lot better in just in the last few weeks, month or so. So anyway.
Yeah, no, he was great when I was there. I was very impressed. Very impressed. Now you do have the option, which is nice, to have your husband there beside you. I've never had that, like, basically ever. Never once since starting this church, unless we have a guest speaker. I don't have my husband there as kind of a like study force, sitting there, because I have noticed that the times when Kelly does get to sit with him, she does better. I don't know if it's because it's dad and he's more stern or something, but she does do better with him. So, but I've only got a couple left to really hone in this stuff. So I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But I do want to ask, or I do want to say that every kid is different, and some are harder than others. I mean, some kids are just quiet by nature. And so they're just going to be, you tell them, okay, we're going to sit through church, sit down and be quiet. And they are. I've had a couple kids like that. It was not an issue. I've had others that are very talkative, very loud, like Hannah. She's just a tornado. So, for her to learn to be quiet for an hour is going to be a huge undertaking. A huge undertaking. We'll get there. And I'm not too worried about it with her. We'll get there. Now, like I said, though, when you have kids that aren't older, you kind of are forced to train and really, hone these skills so that you're not losing it all the time, so that you can sit through a service, so you're not in the nursery all the time and going back and forth. So, but I've known some moms that do it at home if it becomes too frustrating at church. And that's what I might eventually have to do with Hannah. Just play 10 minutes of a sermon. Expect them to be quiet during that. Play 15 minutes. Expect them to be quiet during that. 20, 30, so on and so forth. So you got a whole hour. And I want to throw this in there. I've received a lot of hate over the years of having my channel from atheist, feminist, women who hate this type of thing. Basically criticizing me for expecting my kids to sit through an hour-long church service. Well, here's the thing. What do they do in public school all day? They're expected to sit 6-7 hours in silence in a public school. And if a kid acts out in public school, the parents are blamed, which, it's obvious, then the parents aren't doing their job if their kid can't sit an hour through public school. Also, I've been criticized for saying that I don't like my kids getting up to leave the bathroom during a service. And I've never had my kids in a public school, but maybe you can tell me, in a public school, are you allowed to get up and go to the bathroom whenever you want?
I
or
did
their bathroom breaks?
Private school, and no, I mean, you had to ask your teacher. You definitely didn't just get up and walk out. No, absolutely not.
So if a kid wants to go to the bathroom every 15 minutes in public school, they're allowed to go. That's what I'm wondering. So
No.
I don't understand why by people who hate church think it's so awful to expect your kid to sit for an hour, but yet they are heavily supportive of the public school and everything that goes on.
Just that speaking out of both sides of your mouth thing. That's exactly what that is to me. That's what that translates to me as. So.
Yeah. So I don't think it's too much to expect your kids to sit for an hour without getting up. But, and then what about screaming kids? So if Spurrier starts throwing a fit or screaming, do you just let him scream?
And absolutely not. No, if my child was, if it was my child screaming or even getting, no, Frank and I are both very, we don't do that. We're not going to be those parents. Yeah. Now, I mean, like a little noise that he's maybe trying to fuss, I will just try and rein him in real quick.
Right.
And usually I can, because I kind of just let him know, hey, that's not going to work. You know, you can't do that. But there have been times I just calm him down, either take him. And I try to always use the mother baby room as last resort, not first option, because I feel like I feel like it translates to the child. If I do certain things, mom's going to take me to the place where the toys are.
Right.
So for me, I've always tried, especially with the Sailor and Spurrier for sure, to not just automatically go straight to the mother baby room. Try to take them to the back or off to the side, calm them down, then get right back into the service. And usually that always has worked, whether they fall asleep or they just calm down, or I just see, like I've seen in the back sometimes, and I just continue to listen. I think that is a good choice, because you definitely don't want your kids to see, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, mom's going to take me to where the toys are. So you just kind of have to gauge it with each particular situation. If it's a day where they're just not feeling well, you have to extend them a lot of grace, because like they're kids. At the end of the day, they are children. So I think that's the best way to handle that.
Yeah. Because even though we're family integrated church, it doesn't mean that the church is one of chaos, where you've got babies crying and babies screaming and the mom's just sitting there not doing anything about it. You know, you want to teach them to be reverent of the times, especially when the preacher's preaching, because that is the most important part of church. When you go to church, it's the preaching time, right? The song service is fun. You know, you encourage them to sing during the song service, maybe get their voice out then. The song service can be fun, but when it comes to preaching time, you know, fellowships are fun, dinners are fun, but that's not the most important thing. So the preaching time is important. That's why I don't even want, I try to, even if I have like food or something for fellowship, get it done between services. I try not to get up a lot during the preaching. I try to limit distractions, because every time you get up, especially for no reason, that is distracting. People watch you, you know, they see you, they're wondering, where are you going? You're leaving. And the preaching is the most important time. So I want my kids to realize that. So yep, those are all very, very good tips. Now, what would you expect from, I don't know if we're going to get all this outline.
Okay.
Yeah. From ages 0 to 1, you're not going to have, please don't expect your 10-month-old to sit perfectly through a church service.
No.
So that, please not. I remember, my kids usually at the other IFB churches I've been at, they want them out of the nursery by the time they're 3. So I've kind of always had it in my head that I want my kids sitting with me in church with no distractions and not having to take them out by the time they're 3. So that's kind of my guideline, my goal. And Hannah turns 2 this week. So I'm hoping that in the next few months, I'm going to start working on that with her, trying to get her.
I think you'll do just fine.
Yeah, she'll be fine. It'll be, I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
But definitely, definitely by 5 and up, I would say they should be able to sit for an hour. you know, take them to the bathroom before. At 5 and up, I would allow mine to draw something quietly, get them prepared for taking notes as they get older. Even a coloring book at 5, I would do, you know, just any busy work to keep them quiet.
Yeah.
So, and there are even online on Amazon and things, there are like busy work things that you can buy, you know, things with stickers or colors or something. So yeah, no, the parents in our church, I want to say, Sarah said, if her kids get loud, she takes them out. Distracting everyone and disrupting the event isn't cool or accepted in any other circumstance. The parents in our church are really cool with this. They are very good about, most everyone starts off during the song service. Kids love it. Even babies, they love hearing the music. It's loud. We have the orchestra going. Not a big deal. We love hearing the baby voices. But when it comes down to the preaching time, our parents are really good about, if kids get distracting, take them out. So, you know, go to the whatever. And Sarah's kids are really little. They're like not even 2 or 1, I think. So her oldest is doing amazingly well and and, you know, even I want to mention too, Mavis does amazingly well, but it's not like they've been like, okay, Mavis, you're going to learn this, and been militant about it, you know. And Erin kind of sits in a pew where there's not really anyone else in there. And she'll kind of just walk along the chairs, you know, very quietly playing with a little car or something, but she's quiet and she's not distracting. And I don't mind things like that. I don't mind a little movement from kids when they're really young, you know, as long as they're learning to be quiet, you know, during a church service, that's the most important thing. So,
I agree.
At what age do I require my kids to open the Bible and follow the scripture verses the pastor is referencing? I would definitely say after they're reading well. So, you know, 7, 8, 9, probably around that age is kind of when I would expect that. So, but let's quickly, so she'll be 2.5 when the new baby comes. Yeah. So she's doing amazingly well. But she's the oldest and she has learned, she's pretty quiet anyways. I don't actually hear her talk that much. So she does a lot of sign, which is nice. They do a lot of sign language with her, which is nice in church because I've seen Erin signing things to Mavis, you know, in the chairs. It's really cute.
I use the no thing to tell my kids.
I think I've seen him. Does this mean all done? What does this mean? I just saw him that last night.
I think Hosanna does that. Amanda's daughter. I've seen some kid. Maybe it wasn't Hosanna, but yes, I believe that does mean all done.
Yeah, because I saw him use that sign to her yesterday, so I don't know what he was telling her, but
there was a child I saw do that. It might not have been Hosanna, but I remember seeing that recently. I'm trying to remember where I saw it, but.
Yeah, so they do a lot of little signs to each other. So, but quickly, we are at 4:00. So I'm going to quickly go over these. Church life when it comes to friends and your kids. And I'm specifically talking about just your kids with their friends. You know, what are some things that your kids have learned interacting with friends at church?
Well, I would say that we have had to learn they have had to learn. Okay, so say specifically, I can think of times where one of my kids has came to me, Mom said this child is doing something I know I'm not supposed to do. How do I handle this? I say, okay, well, it's pretty simple. In my opinion, here's what you do. If they're doing something that you know you shouldn't be involved in, you say either we're going to stop doing this or I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. I always remind them to say it, you know, kindly, but also let them know, hey, you know, I'm not going to continue to spend time with you if you're going to keep kind of doing these things to where maybe I'm getting in trouble with my mom because you're trying to bring me into stuff that I know I'm not supposed to be doing. And so for our kids, we always try to just remind them of that and say, you know, we are at church, we're honoring the Lord in everything we do. We're showing kindness to people. We are making sure we're, you know, on our best behavior. So from the moment we get there to the moment we leave, we're putting our, you know, our best foot forward to not to promote ourselves, but to honor the Lord. I always remind them it's not about us. This day is not about us. So, and I think a really great point that was actually preached by Brother Garrett last night that really resonated with me as I was preparing mentally for this particular live stream we're doing, was the whole thing of not comparing one to another. He must increase, I must decrease mentality, to where, for one, you're not looking at another family and saying, well, their kids are all this and they're perfect and they're everything wrong. No, first of all, that's not true.
No.
Every single family, even the pastor's kids, I love how pastor reminds us of that. They have their own issues. I'm raising baby Ashlyn's, baby Frank's. I know their issues and I see their problems more because I see my problems highlighting in them.
Yes.
So the same thing that I see in my kids, if anybody else in the room is looking at their kids and they're seeing something their kids are doing, we may not even notice. Okay.
Right.
But they're noticing it because they're their parents. Right. So it's like, I think it's just kind of that mentality of the not comparing one to another and remembering why we're here. We're here for honoring the Lord. We're here to shine the light of Jesus to our church family, to the people out soul winning, and keeping that perspective in everything we do to where we are more servant hearted. And so I think this is kind of like not exactly, so I'm trying to kind of answer this question, but I'm also think that's a big part of that is having that mentality in your heart and mind that every time you're at church, you're not making it about you.
Right.
And I think if you can have that mentality, you're going to have a better relationship with your church family. You're going to have respect for your pastor and his family that should be there. And you're really just putting others ahead of yourself. So.
Right. No. And I think, church is such a great place just to learn social skills. And there's so much in the Bible that talks about church behavior. There's so much that talks about, this is one of the reasons that we assemble together, not to forsake the assembling of yourselves together, because we're exhorting each other to good works. We're encouraging each other. If you're just watching a live stream from your living room, that's not the same as gathering around the brethren. That's not teaching you patience. That's not teaching you how to interact with different persons.
Exactly.
That's not teaching you, how to be gracious with maybe the woman who's really a little too outspoken.
Yes.
Or a little too bold.
I tell my children all the time, I'm like, listen, I'm speaking to myself in this moment, but I want y'all to understand, we're going to have to interact with people that maybe we don't think exactly the same with, or they're a little different than us. Who cares?
Right.
It's your church family. You need to be willing to be long suffering with those people, right? Because that's what Jesus did. Yep. And I know that almost sounds like really cliche and almost like a whole and like kind of like a weird, holier than that. But that's just reality. And like if Jesus can do it, we should be trying to follow that same model. And I think that is like something that, especially in the last few months, I've really been trying to personally in my heart, but also in the hearts of my kids, being mindful of that in every aspect of life, to where that's in our forefront all the time.
Yep. And just one little illustration from a couple weeks ago, I won't mention names to protect the guilty, but we had a couple little boys that got into a spat, and one of the little boys actually hit or bit or kicked or something the other little boy. Yeah. And so they came in the door, and of course my kids came running up. This happened. So I was thinking, okay, do they need to be separated? What's going on? Well, they came walking in the door together, and I looked at the guilty one and I just gave him a look, and he had tears welling up in his eyes. And the other boy put his arm around him and he said, "It's all right, Miss Cassandra. He apologized to me and I forgave him and it's okay." And so I looked at the little boy and I said, "So-and-so, are you sorry you did that? And that we don't really want that going on at church. You don't need to get physical with each other." Yeah. And he said, "No, I'm sorry." And the one that had been offended, he just told me, he's like, "It's okay, Miss Cassandra. We took care of it." And I love seeing that, because I've always tried to tell my kids, you need to work on this stuff yourself. Don't make an adult get involved. You don't want an adult get involved. If an adult gets involved, the outcome is going to be a lot worse. You need to learn how to fight through these, or not fight through these, but settle these fights, settle the differences. Don't let it escalate to where you're going to have a judge and jury, because then it's going to be it's going to be a lot worse. And even as adults, you see the same principle. And that's why the Bible talks about settle a dispute quickly among yourselves and don't go to the judges of the land, because you should be able to be a judge of things happening in your congregation. You should be able to take care of it. You don't want to get the unsaved involved legally in your matters. So, I think it's a principle that you can start teaching kids from the time that they're young, and it teaches long suffering and how to work through differences and forgiveness and kindness. And, just be careful when it comes to your own kids. And this is my new motto for life. In fact, one of my friends, Carrie, told me she's going to have this like engraved for me, and I'm going to hang it on my wall, like right when you walk in my house, where it says, never say never.
Oh, yes.
Because I am learning that the longer I parent, the more that I parent my kids on all the age spectrums from adult down to 2, never say never. Never make hardcore rules.
I say
yes, never be like, we will never do this in my house. If it's like some off the wall thing, like my kids will never go to college. My kids will never have a job. My kids will never have a phone. My kids will never watch a movie. Be careful, because they're going to come back. Those words are going to come back to haunt you. So, you just realize that your kids do have a sinful nature, and things are going to happen that are going to embarrass you. They're going to humiliate you.
Yes.
And you're going to be like, where did I go wrong? What have I even been doing these last 10 years in your life? Why would you think that was a good idea?
Yeah. Well, and listen, when I have had things like that happen, for one, I try my best to never embarrass my kids in public.
Yes.
I always will kind of slightly deal with that in the moment to let them know, hey, that was wrong. But then we wait till we are either in the car or at home, and we really just address, okay, this is why you shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. Okay. And if that happens again, this is how you handle it. You come find me or dad or whatever the particular solution would be for that thing. And then we will take care of it so that it doesn't happen again, because if it does, then they know they will get their discipline at home, and it won't be a good way. And, so it's helped so much just with those because sometimes they're just those off the wall things that you're, as a parent, you're not ready for.
No, you're not.
You have to accept that about your life and about kids in general and having children, that you just have to have that grace, but still be firm in what you're doing with them, so that they know that mom and dad will deal with it later. It's not going to be like they say it and then they don't back it up.
Right. Right. And my kids know that there's just I've actually had to take my kids home in the afternoon before. We stay here at church a whole day. And there's been some things that have risen that I have not liked what happened.
Yeah.
I have not liked the behavior. So I will take them home with me and deal with it, and then come back. Especially for my ones that are like, 8, 12. I'm not going to deal with that in front of people though. So I do encourage you to discipline in private. Let your kid be a kid, just, they're going to mess up. They're going to have bad days. They're going to have good days, just like you do. And just, model forgiveness and tolerance with others, because they're going to pick up what you exhibit. If you go home every day, every week from church, and you're just bashing everyone in the church, why are you surprised when at 18 they leave and they leave the church? It's full of all those people that you bashed constantly every day. Why would they want to be around people like that, where you were talking about them?
But then if you're exhibiting that behavior, imagine what people are saying about you too. Think about that as well. So it's like, if I wouldn't want someone to do that about me, even if I really can't stand somebody, I try to find a way to just keep extending that grace and more grace, because I would want someone to do the same for me. And I'm talking about people that in my mind, I'm like, I really can't stand this person. But at the end of the day, for me, this is just my mentality, because I know myself. I don't let it define how I treat people. I try my best not to, because I'm really bad about wearing everything on my face.
Yeah.
As far as like how I like somebody, or if I don't. So I'm really more intentional now, because I'm more highly aware of it. Thanks to my husband being like, honey, I love you, but sometimes you have this face where it's like people can tell. So because now I'm so aware of it, I really, really try to which I don't really have that problem at my church. Let me be very clear with that. But should that come up, I really, really make an effort to not show that through my actions and the way I speak to people. And even if I don't even care about something that they care about, at least ask them how things are going, how, you know, because that's the right way to treat people. And that's what you need to exhibit to your children. Mm-hmm. That's what I want someone to do for me, you know? So I think that's a really important thing to do just in interacting with adults and stuff like that.
Right. So. We have a pretty loaded question in the chat. I won't say the name, but a lady asked, at what age do you expect children to sit quietly through a church service? Our 15-month-old son randomly shrieks and babbles and such and wiggles. You know what children do. First of all, that's way too young to sit through service. 15 months old. That's
absolutely too young.
3 months over a year. So yes, they're going to do what babies do. And that's what
there's nothing you can do about that.
No. But she said that her church is full of mostly all older people. There's 20 of us. And she got a hurtful letter from the pastor about how misbehaved her son was and how everyone has talked to him about how their son is misbehaving. And he said their 15-month-old has trained them well because they respond to him. And he quoted the verse about a shameful and reproachful son.
Okay. Well, that is a lot. I would say in that okay, her husband needs to go talk to the pastor. They need to have a meeting.
Yeah, I would agree.
If they can't resolve that issue and at least come to some like, okay, well, you know, and work through that to where at least it's not like the pastor's like, we don't want y'all back here. If that can't be resolved, I would just, I guess, try and find a new church.
That's what I would recommend.
Where you can feel like you're not being on eggshells.
Right.
Okay. And people don't want you there because of your baby. Okay. Because your baby's little.
Yeah.
I mean, grace and more grace. Like, I mean, I just like that should be a given. So that's sad. That's
really it is
situation.
It is sad. And I just, it sounds like they're not welcoming to babies, and
not at all.
When it's really tough when you have littles and you keep them with you at a church where they don't welcome babies or kids, and you're getting the side eye and you're getting,
and you shouldn't be forced to shove your kids off.
No. And anytime your kid is just being a baby, you know, my husband actually, first of all, he is so zoned in when he's preaching. He's told me before, he seems to notice when our kids act up, but any other ones that are like, their mom will be taking him out screaming, I don't want a spanking. And he's like, I didn't even notice, you know, unless it's our kid doing it. But he is so zoned in that he doesn't even hear the baby noises. And he actually appreciates the baby noises, because where there are baby noises, that means that there's people having babies and there's growth. And, you know, so I would definitely, I think that that's a little excessive, because there's no way that your son can be a shameful and reproachful son at 15 months old. That's not even quoting the verses in context.
Yeah.
That's talking about like a drunkard son who has been, you know, reproached, and he is just a lazy, good for nothing drunkard son. So that's not even quoting the Bible verse in the correct context. So I would definitely have your husband talk to him, and then you might need to just find a more family friendly church. I mean, unfortunately, some churches are more like cliques or clubs where they don't want kids around, you know. And eventually, sad to say, that church is just going to die out.
Yes.
You have to have kids. You have to have growth. You have to have families in your church. So, you know, it's to his own hurt that's going to.
And that also goes back to the whole issue of a pastor is meant to be serving the people that are under him. So like,
right.
And I've heard Pastor Boyle say it many times where he's like, you know, I have to serve my church. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't practice the biblical authority that is put over him, but he's always sensitive to, you know, the congregation. He, you know, when it's needed, he gets input, maybe from just a few people, depending on whatever the situation is. I'm just speaking generically here, but I have heard him say that. And, you know, I think that is something that as a pastor, you have to be 100% not in yourself. You can't be. It's just how it is. And if you're not willing to do that, I honestly, part of me is like, why are you a pastor? I that's my initial thought is, why are you even in that?
Well, it sounds like since he's had other church people talking to him about it, he's catering to them. And
and I think that's maybe he could have just, instead of sending a letter, he should have sat down with her husband. And that was a wrong way to go about it.
It definitely, definitely was.
It's just, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. That's a weird one. So it's
Mm-hmm. And just remember, when it comes to behavior in church and the way that you are about church at home and the way you really feel about your church, your kids are going to talk. So kids are going to pick up on your spirit. Kids are going to pick up on your love for the church, on your love for the things of the Lord. And, speak kindly and respectfully about your pastor, but don't idolize him. Don't put him on a pedestal.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that he's human too, which I know Pastor Boyle, and he's one of the most humble guys I know. He'd be one of the first one to say, I mess up. I don't do things exactly the way I need to. I'm human. I'm a sinner too. But I also know that he is a man of God who, knows his Bible and has a genuine love and care for every person that comes to his church.
Yes.
So, definitely I would encourage your kids to think kindly and, of him respectfully and talk to him with respect and, and all that good thing. So I don't know. Do you have any final words to add? I know we went a little late. I'm glad, Spur, you're still sleeping, but
I'm not worried about the time. I know you, but no, I think I just agree with you. Yes, respecting your pastor, his family, but also just in general, the church members, and, always putting others first. I think that's super important. So it shouldn't just be limited to the pastor and his family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should just be a blanket thing, to where it's especially with your friends, people that are really you're close to, always if I can find a way to do something nice for somebody, never because without them really knowing, without them asking, I love to do that, because that to me lets them know, hey, you're important, you're cared about. So there have been times I'm a real Casa fanatic.
You had to throw that in there.
Gifted that away to people.
Yes.
I gifted it away for
they're amazing products,
because it's just I've gifted things for people that are having headache issues. I'm hey, you need this? I'll get it for you. But it's because that's how I show that I care about people. Right. So in someone else that may translate differently, to whereas how they show that they care, but whatever that looks like for you, do that for your church members if you can, just to let people know you care about them, because that could be the difference too between somebody wanting to come back to church. Maybe you don't know what they're going through, and they're maybe I'm just going to throw in the towel and stop coming. But then you do something small, give them some Rocasa, getting them a $10 Dunkin' gift card, inviting them out to go trail riding, Morgan, whatever that looks like, because you want people to know that they are important. Right. I think that translates more through whatever, avenue it may be for that particular person need, just to let people know that. I think that is so important, because people, I keep repeating myself, but I think that's just so, so important, because sometimes people are going through things and, they get burnt out, or they just feel maybe life is just too hard. And, you just never know. So I think that's just always an encouragement to someone. So if you can find a way to just kind of shine some light into their life and brighten their day, do it. Figure it out.
Sure. I would encourage every family to do a study through the Bible and just look at all the times that the Bible talks about church behavior. Okay. So go through those passages and just see, there's a lot in Acts about church behavior. 1 Timothy, there's different sections and things where they deal with behavior, and God had a lot to say about it. And especially when it comes to other Christians, we are supposed to, and it says different things about, especially those of the household of faith. Who is the household of faith? It's anyone who's saved. So when it comes to your brethren in Christ, we're supposed to have a love for them that's different from the love of even the world, anyone that's in the world. I'm not talking about loving your spiritual family more than your physical family. I'm not talking about that, but there is a special bond there. And that's why it's not natural for Christians to hate other Christians.
Yes.
Because the Bible even talks about how can you love me who you've not seen when you can't even love each other who you have seen. So, there's different things in that. That was not word for word. I Cassandra it. So look it up.
You did fine. Everyone understands.
Yes. Look it up if you want to see the exact quoting of that. But we are supposed to have love for the brethren, and we're supposed to have love for the people that we serve alongside with, that we soul in with, that we eat with, that we fellowship with, that we play music and sing hymns to God with. There's supposed to be a special connection there. And if there's not, if you're having problems at any church you go to, suddenly 5 years later, you hate the church. Yeah, because they have all these problems. You might need to look inwardly and see that maybe you have a problem.
Yes.
Yeah. And I was just,
I've seen that. Yeah. I've seen that before with people. And it's unfortunate when that happens because I mean, I can think of a situation where I tried to explain this to someone very, very just lovingly, but also just saying, hey, you are not seeing what everyone else is seeing. So I'm trying to help you understand that, unfortunately, from what I've personally witnessed with, from my personal observation, you're in the wrong in this particular situation. You need to look inwardly. You need to, but not just for the sake of, everyone else, but for the sake of yourself, for the sake of your kids, for the sake of your family, for growing in the Lord. You have to do that now. And if you can't, I feel like you're going to go down a wrong path. Unfortunately, that situation, they did not listen. It was really rough because of just like someone that I was very close to. And I still in my heart wish that they would get that right and, come back and be in the right spirit, but it just doesn't it did not translate. You can't will that for someone. You can't make them do that. At the end of the day, people make their own choices.
They do. And it is something that I know, just human nature. A lot of times if people maybe leave our church, or I don't pester them about it, because I have found that people need to come to that realization themselves, and it causes a lot of more hurtful feelings if I press them. Or it's not that I don't care. Sometimes people need space and they need time to figure this stuff out themselves, because I have tried going out to eat with someone that's leaving the church and, just hashing it out, and it caused more problems in the long run. Because people aren't often to that point in their life where they're willing to look inwardly yet. So a lot of times God will work on their heart. And so I just pray about it. I say, God, please show this person that I truly do love them. I truly do care for them. And in a lot of times, they end up coming back. Maybe they just needed a break. Maybe they needed a little time to reflect or whatever. So a lot of times you can just help a situation just by praying about it. And by leaving it in the Lord's hands and, not really pestering someone about it or whatever, because people have to come to that realization themselves. But it is 4:30, almost 4:30. So we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. But thank you for coming on.
I'm always here for you, girl.
Everyone, I knew we would go a little longer because we're both talkers. So.
We are. I'm sorry, everybody on the live.
They
it's
said
how we are.
We are. When you get us together, there's never a quiet moment ever.
That's so true. That is so true. And we make up for a lot in the year at family camp when we were apart. So yeah.
And there's always talk. But thank you for coming on. And then if there's any they're saying they liked your personality and you seem very bubbly and fun. And Kaylin said, we got blessed today, y'all, an hour and 30 minutes live. So I tend to go longer with my guests. So that's good. And Raquel said she enjoyed it. So thank you for joining in, ladies.
Well, thank you for your kind words, everybody. I hope it was an encouragement to whoever watched.
Yes. So speaking of Raquel, we had done a live a while ago. And I think we talked about just going natural and different things like that. I would like to have you on sometime again.
Oh, yes.
To pick your brain about something else. Too. Yeah. Yeah. So I will, I'll get back with you, Raquel, sometime about that.
Yes.
Having you
all
on for something. Stuff. Yep. All the crunchy stuff, the stuff that I'm not really, but You can encourage me to be better.
We're gonna convert you, darling.
Yes.
Don't you worry.
Yes. I actually tried.
Care package.
Yeah, Rocasa. So she gave me some Rocasa dry shampoo at family camp. And I used it yesterday. Yes, the soap is almost gone. We've almost pretty much used that. But the dry shampoo, I used it. And the whole day I smelled like hot chocolate. Because
yes. Don't you love that?
Cocoa. Yes.
I love that. That's my favorite.
I smell like hot chocolate.
I know.
And then when I took a shower that night, it was like hot chocolate.
Yes.
So anyways, all right. My husband's trying to get in
okay.
Get in. So I will let you go. Stay on just a minute, but thank you all for